Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. And our top stories today, Japan's economy slows, and in aging Japan, defining who is elderly or pre-old. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Dr. Kenji Chida. He's an independent researcher and consultant based in Okayama, Japan. Kenji, as always, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me back.
All right, so we got two really important topics to talk about. Let's start off with Japan's economy. You guys just hosted the Olympics, not you guys, but the wonderful country of Japan just hosted the Olympics without fans. A lot of expectations there in terms of economic impact. And you also have an election coming up, parliamentary election for new premier in a month or so, less than a month, I should say. So let's talk about what's the economy like. Give us the impact right now.
After the Olympics,
let's talk about the economy first.
Okay. Well, I think the economy is redefined itself. Basically, the international tourism section and even large parts of domestic tourism have been, you could say, put on the back burner or put in cold storage. And to say, well, they're just not part of the economy right now, which is, as far as the international part of it, that was 10%, 11% of the economy. The total economy, international tourism, which is right up there with countries like Thailand and the Philippines, which means that Japan was dependent upon tourism just as much as those countries, although the country has other resources, other avenues to get foreign exchange.
Yeah, and what I've been reading is that, like everywhere else in the world, there's been a global supply chain shortage. Japan's a great manufacturer of things like vehicles, electronics, and other important things that the world uses, but not only the world, but Japan. What's been the impact there to both large manufacturers and small business?
Well, it's been huge here as well. I mean, there's been a number of news stories about, I'm not sure if there were accidents or sabotage, and I think the authorities aren't sure either, but there have been lots of fires in warehouses and manufacturing firms around the country that have specifically interrupted certain parts of the supply chain in terms of electronic parts, spare parts, and devices. So even without that, it was difficult because it's about sourcing the raw materials to make those parts, which became more difficult and more expensive because of the effects of the corona pandemic.
And in terms of corona, are you on your third, fourth wave? Are there still quarantines? People vaccinated? Where do we stand there?
Well, I think they stopped calling them waves really months ago. I think I saw reference to a fourth wave at one point, but I think the authorities realize that what it is that when new variants come, and once the protocols are relaxed or state of emergencies are lifted, then there's a resurgence of infections each time. So it seems like an ongoing endless battle. They wanted to blame the international athletes for sudden. I mean, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but suddenly, when the athletes started coming, the cases started surging in Tokyo anyway, and they wanted to blame it. But I'm not sure if it's completely all of that. I think it's partly because of people really not following the protocols themselves, and then protocols being lifted too quickly, and the government really not really prioritizing containing the virus, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I think, look, there's always scapegoating, right? It's always because we had this group of people in. I mean, the hard thing about a virus is if you get it and I get it, we don't know from whom, even if you and I were in the same room, we don't know from whom we got the virus. So I think I would define that as scapegoating. But be that as it may, I know that for the first time in several months, the economy has kind of contracted. Now, I do have read where business sentiment is a little bit more optimistic, assuming that they can get workers to come back into the workforce, into the office to do work. Are you seeing more of your colleagues, people that you work with, return to the office, or are people still primarily working remotely?
People are still working remotely pretty much, at least in the education field, by decree of their workplace. So it could be because they're trying to get their entire staff and student body vaccinated before everyone comes back, or they just think that it's still too dangerous to have a full campus of students and faculty. So I think you have both. But as far as education, people are staying at home doing online work. Office people are going in pretty much. I think office people, or you could say salaried employees of companies, they're pretty much going in to work as usual, but using the social distancing and all the safety protocols.
Yeah. So let's shift. And what's interesting is that it's consistent everywhere. It's the same that we're experiencing here in the U.S. That we have, the vaccine mandates is what they're calling them in certain states and cities here in the U.S. and they're even talking about a federal mandate, which still has to work its way through the judiciary. But let's talk about let's forgetting the politics of it. Let's talk about the election coming up, and really this is kind of a referenda, I guess, on Abenomics. And Japan has a parliamentary system, so it's not very different here from the U.S., where we have a electoral college and a direct election of the president. What are the choices here?
Well, how many candidates are there? Well, first of all, I mean, the current Prime Minister Suga decided to step down after 1 year. I can't speak for him, but I knew, and I think I mentioned to you before in a previous show, that somebody is going to have to answer for the missteps of handling the coronavirus after the Olympics are over. The Olympics took the spotlight away from that, but when they're gone, and it was going to be him. So not that he still won't have to answer to some degree, at least he can step down and remove himself from the direct attacks. And so the options now, you have, I can't remember all the candidates' names, but the front runner is Mr.
Kuroda, is that it?
Mr. Kono.
Kono, excuse me.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kono is, he was the one in charge of handling the coronavirus pandemic, and he was in charge of putting the vaccines on a schedule and distributing the vaccine around the country. So he was like the face of that, and people trust him. The other one is Ishida, Mr. Ishida, a longtime politician, conservative, of course, and he was up for the job when Suga was running for it the last time. When I say run for it, it really is just a selection of the top minister within the Congress. Basically, it's not the people that get to choose the prime minister. So they choose from their own, basically. And interesting enough, there are two women also running. I can't remember both their names. One is Miss Sato. Can't remember the other lady's name. But I don't think they have much of a chance to win, but I think the favorite will be Kono.
Yeah, and is it your sense there are really two tracks here, right? There's kind of remember it was the Abenomics and, the kind of the status quo, and then, do we need a different, do the Japanese need a different direction? Is that really the choice here? Because markets, at the end of the day, the economy, the markets, meaning like the Nikkei and other, indices, they need stability, or that's what they say markets need. But is it really a choice of direction, where we're going, how we were heading, or a new direction, charting a new direction for Japan?
Mr. Kono would be more towards a new direction because he has a reputation for being more free spoken with his ideas, I think, and maybe not towing the party line, because they're all, as far as I know, I think they're all LDP, Liberal Democratic Party. So he has a reputation of speaking his mind. For example, when he said, I don't know, this is one of the things I like, when he said he wishes that international media would refer to past Prime Minister, when he was Prime Minister, Mr. Abe, Shinzo Abe, refer to him as Abe Shinzo and not Shinzo Abe, because his name in Japan is Abe Shinzo. That's how he's called. So, to respect that part of Japanese culture just internationally. I think that's just something that stands out about him, that most people wouldn't even bother with something like that, but he took the time to do it. And I think people expect that he'll be willing to listen to the gripes that people have about what happened with the coronavirus situation, economically, public health. There are a lot of people who have lost their jobs, of course, because of the coronavirus. People have lost their homes. This is nationwide. Divorces. I mean, every kind of malady you can imagine has happened because of the effects of the coronavirus. And it's the Prime Minister's job to sort of assure people that there's a future, really. And I think people may be looking to him for that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I would say all bets are off. Same issues here. How things are being handled. When can we get back to some level of normalcy? Is normalcy possible? Kenji, we need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're talking about defining aging. Is it elderly or pre-old? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. Both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-504-8194.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Kenji Chida. He's an independent researcher consultant based in Okayama, Japan. Kenji, thanks as always for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This one, I have to chuckle a little bit. Look, Japan's an aging nation, and there are many aging nations, the US, China. You look all throughout the world, a lot of people getting older, not a big fertility rate in a lot of these countries. But I read an article recently where they are now trying to redefine or define what is elderly and what is pre-old. I want to get your take on this because I just kind of laugh when I see articles like this.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, this issue it's pretty diverse in a way because there's negative sides and positive. On the negative thing about aging, there's the issue of driving, which is a huge issue in this country because there's been lots of elderly people in accidents, fatalities and things like that. And the other one is long-term care for seniors who are alone or don't have other family members around. So that puts or shines a negative light on the elderly on the one side. But then on the other side, there's quite a number of older people who reach 65 that are incredibly healthy and energetic and continue to work. In Japan, basically the retirement age is 60 to 65, depending on what kind of job you have. For example, public school teachers will have the option, I think, even now to retire at 60 with full benefits. So
yeah.
65 is more common. And then, you get 67. Some universities will have 70. But I think that's, as it was, we discussed a little bit in the article, we both read that that's probably pressure from the government as well, just to keep people out there. And a lot of people who work, and I know a lot of people who are senior workers, like, clinic owners and things like that in the countryside, who are completely prepared to work until the day they die at work if need be. And that's part of the culture here as well. For example, in doctors, for example, for all intents and purposes, can't retire.
Right. And let me ask you this, because, you have been on talking about the Japanese retirement system, and this terminology, again, I'm laughing. It's really not that funny. Japan Gerontological Society and the Japan Geriatric Society say that 65 to 74 is now called pre-old age. Okay, we're living longer. I get it. But is this really a way to kind of think about benefits and when to pay benefits? And if people are working longer, maybe you don't have to pay benefits out earlier. I kind of liken it to the Social Security debate here. When to pay people. If you wait longer, you get a bigger benefit. So is this part of that conversation, or am I completely missing it?
I think it is part of the conversation because, you just put some new terminology out there and, to justify the way your policy is heading anyway. Everybody knows that the pension's going to shrink and it's also going to be moving to an older age in general. Now, I mean, the pension system has all kinds of caveats that people can take advantage of depending on their specific situation. But for the most part, an average person will eventually, when they retire, maybe someone even like my age, would probably see their full pension later. It might move from 65 to 67 or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely part of what's going on. Nobody, I mean, even in Japan, nobody, people try to stay. And because if you think about who the 65-year-olds are, they are, 15, 16 years older than me. They're like, they're not from, they're not baby boomers, they're like, maybe they're very late baby boomers or they're early generation X's, some of them are. At the very least, I mean, they still have a sense of youth and vitality. In Japan, people tend to follow, fashion trends and things. So people don't look at themselves as being old, and it's part of being in a society where someone who's old, you look at, there's such a range, and you in your neighborhood, you might have a few people who are over 100 and still relatively healthy. Certainly people in their 90s and 80s. Like in my neighborhood, there's plenty of people who are in their 80s and 90s. People in their 80s who still drive,
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to the individual and what he or she has done and what their physical capabilities are, their mental capabilities. Last question here on this. We could go on forever about this, but I do think it's more about the benefits and getting people to work longer. Is there ageism in the workplace? So here in the U.S., a lot of boomers, what we call boomers, late Gen Xers, people starting in their 40s, harder for people to get work. Companies want to get cheaper. Organizations want to get cheaper in terms of what they're paying their headcount. Does that exist in a country like Japan, which has a aging population?
Definitely exists, and it was more prevalent in the past than it is now. In the past, they'd say, okay, you have to be this age to get this job. You have to be female from 16 to 22, or this kind of thing they put on the advertisement in broad sight. Now you don't see that as much, and although you're unlikely to see an older woman who's not the owner in some type of fashion shop, they're actively encouraging companies to employ seniors everywhere in convenience stores, where you expect to find energetic young people, fast food shops. You see them everywhere. And the interesting thing for me is when I see seniors as security guards. They're everywhere in Japan, doing all kinds of security, or kind of traffic control type of things. And, when I look at them, I feel tired, like I want to lay down or something, because I think that, at that age, you should be able to rest, but if people just have the drive to do it. You probably know, but I think people have to remember, like the median age in Japan is, I looked it up, it's 48, according to the internet, 48.4 years old. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the US, it's like 38.5. So, I think that pretty much means, like, if you're walking down the street, if you run into somebody in Japan, they're probably going to be close to 50. Somewhere along those lines, a little bit older, a little bit younger. In the US, probably going to be in their 30s, the average person you run across, right? And it makes a difference in how people think. So people think, I think 48.4 is pretty young in Japan. That's young because there's a lot of people who are 88 or 90, so that's considered young. And then, whereas I'm not sure if 38 or 38 and a half is considered young in the States, but it's the population you're around. You see very few young people en masse here, compared to other countries you might go to, like, the Philippines and something like that, where everybody seems to be under 20 or something when I've been.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think Japan's an aging society, but I do think that people of all ages can contribute to a business, to a government, to a not-for-profit, and that's something that employers really need to be thinking hard about, and as a culture need to be thinking hard about, whether it's in Japan, China, the U.S. Kenji, we're going to have to leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us on the program, giving us your insight, and especially from the great island country of Japan. Great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back again very soon.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
Kenji, great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective. That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.